A quick word before we get into this week's episode.
I was talking to a head of school recently who said, Peter, we've got a strong strategic plan, but every time we try to act on it, things stall. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Big goals are easy to write down, but they often get bogged down in the daily, making it hard to stay strategic. That's why I built the school operating system. It's a framework that helps you align your team and focus your priorities so you can actually execute the plan. We work alongside you to extrapolate a one-year plan from your existing strategic plan, break it into 90-day sprints, and design a much more effective meeting rhythm that moves your team closer to your strategic vision every single day. And that's just the start. We support much more to help you build the operational infrastructure your plan needs to succeed. If you're serious about making traction this year, let's talk. Visit moonshotos.com/SOS. That's MOONSHOTOS.com/SOS to learn more and set up a time to chat about the school operating system.
Hi there, my friend. I'm Peter Barron. Welcome to today's episode of the Independent School Moonshot Podcast. I am so excited for this conversation. And I'll tell you why I'm excited for this conversation, because it's directly tied to work that students are doing at Vail Mountain School. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But before then, I'm thrilled that Kelly Enright, who's the director of technology at Vail Mountain School, is here. She's really been doing some interesting work around AI. And if you look back at the podcast archive, you can see I'm starting to talk more about the intersection of AI, independent school operations, just school in general. And so this conversation is rooted in how are we bringing AI into our communities? Because I know it's overwhelming. Like, I just can't think of anything that from a technology point of view that has had such sudden impact on our schools. So this is going to be a fun conversation. We're going to get into it in just a second. But before I do that, Kelly Enright, welcome to the podcast.
Peter, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. And we're going to get there in a sec. But before we do, can you start just by introducing yourself and Vail Mountain School?
Sure. So as you shared, I am the director of technology at Vail Mountain School. I have the privilege of getting to work with students and teachers as it relates to tech and trying to find, a balance as we're utilizing it as a tool, and then also trying to make sure that we are thinking about ethics and critical thinking, being well-rounded. And our school is really wonderful. It's nestled in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. We are a small independent day school with just over 360 students, K-12. So it's really fantastic.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've had the privilege of visiting a number of times this year, and it is pretty spectacular. The campus, the surroundings. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And I know you and I had talked before about your AI journey, the school's AI journey. And what's fascinating to me is like this is really rooted in student experience, and students are helping to drive, AI at Vail in a very interesting way. So I want to start there. Like, can you share the origin story behind that and how you built or how a student-led AI committee got built, and now it's evolved into something bigger? I'd love to hear all that.
Sure. With the onset of ChatGPT, we had teachers in our office down in the tech department really quite concerned. What does this mean for education? What is this going to mean for us as teachers? And some of our teachers were ready to dive in and do a lot of research, and some of our teachers were really, really nervous. And then, of course, we had everywhere in between. And so that following summer, we developed a position statement and some policy, just a draft, as we kind of knew that this was big and we did not fully understand where this was going to go, and started talking about what conversations might we need to start having. And our head of school was really excited to just dive in and find out what this was all about. And so we decided to form some committees, and one of those was a student-led committee. I went into our upper school town meeting and presented that, we were going to do a little research and try and find out. And if anyone was interested in joining the committee, we opened it up to everyone. Please sign up, and we've been meeting once a week to just dive in a little bit. And it was really fun. I got a group of 10th graders who were ready to take on this challenge, I think because they were so excited about what the potentials of AI could be, and they were playing around with it. And so we started meeting and at first playing around with different platforms of AI. And it came about in conversation that so many students were using AI and learning about it in ways that were not serving them, that they really wanted to be learning about this from their teachers. And so we created a space for them to speak with the entire faculty about kind of what their hopes were for AI in the classroom. And teachers were able to share with them their concerns. And it was so powerful to watch this group of students sit in front of the entire faculty and speak, and then have to field difficult questions that we don't have the answers to, or all the answers to, and we're still working on that. And then this evolved into, speaking with parents as well, because we want to make sure as an independent school, we're partnering with parents. And this group of students really wanted to showcase how they were trying to use this in the classroom. And so they were able to speak with parents. They spoke with the school district, who was also looking to try and grapple with how do they use it. So the school district actually called us, and we were able to meet with them, which was so empowering for these students. And as that kind of unfolded, our policy and position statement were really broad and didn't cover what needed to be covered for each different department, especially in upper school. And so the students started working with our honor council to come up with more guidelines for each department. And the department chairs sent drafts of their policies and guidelines, and the students took a look at it and said, this makes sense. This is challenging for us to understand. Could you give us more clarity here? And it's been an iterative process, and we are not done yet. This is something that's continuing as we continue down this road. And the latest project that these students have been working on is working with other students, younger students in the building. This group of students has expanded, so it's still upper school, but the main core group are now seniors, and they have developed 4 lessons for our 9th graders. We teach a digital ethics class, and they've talked about the ethics of using AI. They went into detail with 4 different lessons, the first one being about the history of AI and informing these students that AI isn't actually new. It's just the exponential growth of AI is very new.
Right.
And then the second one, they talked with the students about good prompting and how can we prompt better. And that was really powerful for the students. They loved to dive in and actually see, okay, what can I do to tweak? It was so applicable. The third lesson they covered really spoke to the students and to us as adults about how the workforce may be changing and is already changing, because for these kids, that is so real. And then finally, they did a wrap up of, let's talk about where we are with kind of our tiered system, where we have assignments that certain assignments are no AI use. We want you to gain these certain skills still. And so we don't want you to use AI. Or there's certain assignments that could be a tier 4, meaning you could use AI in any way you choose as long as you cite it properly. And then there's the in-between where teachers may say, these skills we want you to do on your own because these are skills that we're assessing, and these are skills where you can use the AI to help you, to give you that, graphic organizer, that feedback on your essay that you've already written.
I'm I'm thinking about as we're talking here, so many things struck me. So I'm gonna work through each one. But the first one is very early on, in terms of AI and trying to figure out like what is this thing and how is it going to be, applicable at our school and what are we going to do in terms of guidelines, all that stuff that is really important to figure out. So you brought together this kind of open committee. Students showed up, and they're clearly passionate about this. How did you take the leap from having them in this kind of open forum to actually like this? What I'm hearing is like this charter emerged where they're empowered to take a really significant role in terms of helping the school figure out a very complicated thing that's changing. I mean, what I always say, and I apologize on the pod, I probably said this like 50 times, but like the AI of today is going to look very different just 30 days from now. I mean, it's changing so quickly. So like was there a moment where there was like something coalesced around, I need to like figure out how to put these students in front of the entire faculty. Like that to me is like incredible. Like how did that come about?
I think as we were playing around with the AI, just as a group and as students, and they were really talking about how they were using it and it wasn't going well. As teachers, we want to be the ones who are sharing with them how to use it appropriately, how to use it ethically. We don't want them to be gaining that information from whether it's YouTube or other students. Um, and so that was kind of the driving force.
Yeah.
I feel so lucky that VMS is such a rapport driven school that we want to build those connections with our students. And when our students reach out and are asking for something, or asking for help, or asking for guidance, we don't want to deny that. We want to be there for them and we want to provide that. And we want to be walking right beside them in this journey.
And now a word from our sponsor. Leading a school today can mean juggling a dozen different systems across offices, finance, fundraising, marketing, enrollment, and academics, all pulling your attention in different directions. At Blackbaud, we believe it shouldn't be that way. That's why we built Blackbaud's Total School Solution. It's a fully connected solution designed for private and independent school leaders who want a clear view of their entire operation. From tuition to transcript to donation, you get one ecosystem, one login, and one source of truth. This isn't about more software. It's about smarter strategy. When your systems work together, you spend less time chasing down data and more time leading. Want to see what Blackbaud's Total School Solution could do for your school? Visit blackbaud.com. That's BLACKBAUD.com to learn more. I really appreciate that. And especially when it comes to something like AI, where, it can make you feel very vulnerable. Right? Like all of a sudden this crazy technology's emerged and like, I got to make sense of it. I don't really understand it, but now I'm going to, like, there's just like all these tensions that are at play, and that students were able to say, hey, like this is really important. And then have this dialogue with the faculty. And like, if you think where you are today in terms of being part of policy and guidelines, and now all of a sudden, they're teaching ninth graders about AI. I mean, that is pretty incredible. And speaking of that teaching the ninth graders, what impact have you seen from students who are leading this work? Like, what does that look like?
When they were teaching this last class, it was really powerful to see that they had a group who was able to use AI for everything to complete this mock assignment that they created. And one of the gentlemen teaching said, and what did you understand from that when you just kind of copied and pasted the AI? And the students were like, well, I can't tell you anything. And so I think it's this realization that they have to interact, that they still have to think critically, that they still have to use all these skills. And if they try and just copy and paste from the AI, they're only doing a disservice to themselves, that they're not actually learning. We talk so much about how their voice is so important, their thoughts are so important. And I don't want that to get lost as we, go down this road of AI. I think that they feel so empowered to talk with other members of the community, whether it's the students or the teachers now, because they feel like they're making an impact, and that's been really wonderful to watch.
That's awesome. And I love the connection that they're making with faculty around AI. But at the same time, I'm now thinking about this conversation that I had, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago with Eric Hudson around AI and independent schools, and I was really struck by his describing how there's this like big spectrum when it comes to AI. Like on one end, you have schools where like we're all in, we're gonna be a leader in the market, we're gonna, we're gonna be the example for our industry, right? And but then on the other end, you have schools that are saying AI will never step foot on our campus, we will not use it, like, and we're gonna keep our we're just not gonna participate. But then there's like all this stuff in the middle. And, what I'm hearing just talking to, folks in our industry here is that there's like this real gamut when it comes to faculty reaction around excitement or resistance. So I'm curious from your perspective, as somebody who's a director of technology, is really the point person thinking about strategy around how are we going to use technology at Vail Mountain School. How are you helping teachers feel supported and less overwhelmed as they learn alongside students? Because like this is just a lot to take in.
Mhm. It is. We have a lot of conversation at our school. I feel very fortunate that our head of school really supports this initiative, and we try and meet our teachers where they are. And so we have meetings, and some of those meetings are full faculty meetings, and some of those meetings are lower school specific, middle school specific, or upper school specific. And in our upper school specific meetings, we talk more about the ethics of this, the fact that we all went to school for many years to teach our content or these skills. And now we're being asked to teach something that we don't fully understand. And that's really scary as we try and wrap our heads around all of this. And we start to ground ourselves in why do we need to teach this? So we interviewed our senior class from last year and our graduates who have now gone through college and are starting to enter the workforce, and just asked them what some of their experiences have been. And those ranged from my school encourages me to use AI at all times to my school says no AI, period, and everywhere in between. And we shared that with teachers. And we said, we need to be able to not only teach students how to use the AI, but when it is appropriate and when it's not. And then after presenting all of this, we opened it up and said, what are your concerns? And so, really giving teachers that forum to say, we're concerned that we want our students to still have grit and still be able to problem solve when things get hard, because we don't want them to just be able to look up the answer. They're going to run into difficult situations, and we want them to still know how to deal with this. We want to still hear their voices in their writing. We want to still have that creativity, that collaboration, all of these things that we want. And so really hearing their concerns, um, and then building off of that has helped get people more on board. And then after that, we're able to play around and explore with AI after they've been able to kind of express that, because teachers need that time and that space to say, okay, I've got a lesson that I don't really love. How can I use AI to revamp it and make it better for me? How can I use AI to create me a rubric so that I understand what the AI can do and how can it help me? And then I understand when I should be thinking for myself and I don't need AI, so that I can then carry that over with my students. Um, And then we've also really been trying to share examples. Our teachers who are championing this, we have wonderful teachers in the building who are doing some incredible work. We have them share out. They open their classroom doors so that you can come in and see what they're doing. And it's really, it builds that excitement, and it makes it more approachable.
I love this on so many levels. And I'm just going to kind of break it down to make sure yeah, this is what I'm hearing. And this is why this is what I really appreciate about your strategy is first, you're talking to former students who are out there kind of in that college experience. Maybe they're in the workforce and you're trying to understand, well, how is AI going to impact them once they get into, the workforce or whatnot. And this is something honestly, Kelly, that I think about a lot because I've got a ninth grader and a freshman in college. And I like to, I feel like I've had pretty good success being able to look out a little bit and see, okay, what's coming. But when it comes to AI, like I have no idea how the workforce is going to change in 4 years when my daughter graduates or 8 years when my son. And so like these are really important conversations to have. So I appreciate how you're doing that work to learn from your alums. Then I love how you're bringing that back to your faculty and saying, this is what we're hearing, but then giving them space to say, hey, this is why we're concerned. Like, having that kind of dialogue back and forth really does wonders in terms of figuring out like what is the best strategy for your organization. And then once you've done that, then backfilling it with lots of support, professional development, training, helping them, giving them space to try things and feel safe. Like all of these steps to me make so much sense in terms of building that buy-in at the faculty level. The And then what this leads me to is I know you've connected this work with parents and alums, but you're also actually bringing this to uh, our industry, right? Like I know you've done stuff with Collab, NAIS. I'm super curious from your perspective, like what have you learned by bringing those broader voices into the conversation?
I think the more voices we hear, the better. When um, talking with other schools, you're able to share experiences, you're able to talk about what is working and then what doesn't go well. And that is really helpful, especially when we're in an area where we're all kind of learning together. So being able to collaborate um, is so important here. I love that we're able to share with our students that we're collaborating still as adults. What collab brings for all of us, I feel, is different explorations every month that we're playing around with as teachers, that we can really use the very next day. And it makes it approachable. I think for so many teachers and schools, um, it is easier to say, I don't want to touch this because I don't quite understand it yet. I'm not really sure where to go. And that is something that we need to provide for schools, for teachers, the good prompt that can say, all right, how do I get my students up and moving today? This is my lesson. This is where I want to go. Give me some ideas for some kinesthetic movement in this class. And and the forum to say, this didn't go well. The AI gave me that back, and this wasn't really what I needed or wanted. And how could we tweak that? And again, just an iterative process. Um, so I feel like that forum has just been very valuable to a lot of us. And just talking with schools all around the country who are in similar boats and talking with certain teachers who do spread that gamut of my school doesn't want to touch AI. My school's doing so much with AI, it's overwhelming me, and everywhere in between. And then NAIS just providing more experiences and um, documentation and literature for how is this going? What's maybe on the horizon and what we can expect next. I think those communities are so important for us to continue to tap into.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really hard to figure it out in isolation. And being able to see how other organizations are tackling this in their own ways definitely gives you kind of like a playbook of stuff that you can borrow from, which is always pretty cool. Um, we talked about how, you're setting this, how you're bringing AI into your community, and we walked through all those steps. I'm curious, um, I had mentioned before how I think about my son and my daughter and what their future is going to look like, especially around with AI. But like, how are you preparing students for that future? Whether it is in college or the workplace, and I guess even putting even finer point on it, what skills do you believe students are going to need to graduate with to be successful in this kind of new AI and shaped world?
Yeah. I think students are still going to need the skills that we've taught them for years. Those critical thinking skills, those problem solving skills. Um, and then they're also going to need, to understand when is AI acceptable and when is it not, especially right now. As we talked about, there are certain institutions who are saying, let's do this. And there are certain institutions that are not wanting to involve AI, and everywhere in between. And so making sure that students know, okay, this is where it is appropriate. This is how I have those conversations about it. Um, and then really thinking about strong prompting and um, the ethical pieces of it. Am I using my own thoughts and my own words? We talk a lot to the kids about human in and human out, and making sure that they're putting in as much as they can of their thoughts, their ideas, and then whatever they get back out of it, they're also tweaking and editing and revising. So I think those, again, revision is a process we've done with students for years.
Right.
It's just looking a little bit different now. Um, and really continuing to talk about the ethical pieces of this, of what are our goals? What's our output? How can we use this as a tool and as a support to enhance what we're doing?
I love that you're enhancing what you're doing. That's such a great way of framing it. And as you're looking ahead at the next chapter of AI at Vail Mountain School, what do you think that could look like? And, if somebody is, and this is, I always love to end the pod this way, Kelly. Like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, like it's clicking, like, I'm really excited about this, but I'm not entirely sure where to start. What might they borrow from some of the things that you're already doing?
I think starting small. It is always good to start small. And this is when we started with the student group. It started with myself and a group of 8 kids. And so, really, starting small, starting with one platform, maybe you're just diving into one large language model that you're putting in a lesson that you don't love, that you really want to make better, or it's one rubric. But that whole starting small and then also reaching out to others. I find that having a thought partner is so helpful. In CoLab, it's called an accountability buddy.
I love it. That's great.
So making sure that you've got somebody you're talking
Yeah.
with that's kind of saying, "Hey, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing." So those would be my takeaways for how
Yeah.
we started.
Brilliant advice. Don't start small. I love that. Start small, start to experiment, build some of that muscle memory so that you can start to figure out like what's the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing. Um, Kelly Enright, this has been so much fun. I love this conversation. I love the work that you're doing at Vail Mountain School. If somebody's listening to this and say, I need to follow up with her, like how can they get a hold of you?
They can email me. They can find me. Our website is vms.edu. My email is kenright@vms.edu. Please feel free to reach out. I love working with other schools and collaborating, and that's what builds the enthusiasm, the excitement. Also helps kind of reassure and talk through some of those difficult questions and navigate it together.
That's fantastic. Kelly Enright, Director of Technology at Vail Mountain School. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing the journey.
Thanks, Peter.